Welcome to the Accountability Works Summer Wellness Interview Series. I'm Marissa Boisvert, and for the next 4 weeks, I'm going to be talking to our coaches in their area of expertise beyond being an accountability coach. The intention of this series is to share information that will help support your overall health and well being. So, first up, we're going to talk about sleep. Sleep is a hot topic, so I'm super excited today to dive into this subject with Kelly Day O'Brien. Hey, Kelly.
Hello. Hello.
So, Kelly is, of course, an Accountability Work certified coach. She is also a nationally board certified health and well being coach with further specialization in sleep behavior change. So, Kelly, how did you become interested in developing your expertise in sleep?
Really, I think it was by nature of the integrative coaching, health coaching model, because as you know, we take a kind of a 360 view of someone's health. So early on, working with clients, they would be coming in for typically one or two specific things, either, related to a chronic illness or wanting to improve lab values. Some were just looking to optimize all the areas of their health. When we were looking at the area of sleep and rest, it was interesting because it either came up as an area that folks weren't paying much attention to and didn't really give much credence to in terms of what else was going on in their health. And it was also one of the areas that when we started to pay a little bit of attention and make some changes, those other things they were looking to change got easier to change. So I'm like, oh, there's something here. It's almost like sleep is a superpower that is the unsung hero here. We're not paying attention to it, and it has really strong impact. So, how can I learn more about how to support people who are looking to make any health change, but come in sometimes from that lens of sleep when it's clear that there's something there? There's a strong connection point.
Mhm. I love that. So, what are the top three issues you see when it comes to sleep or sleeping well?
Yeah, I think usually folks are falling into one of three camps, and that is trouble falling asleep or trouble staying asleep. They'll fall asleep just fine, but middle of the night they'll wake up and not be able to get back to sleep quickly. It's those middle of the night awakenings feel disruptive to their sleep. And then the third camp is, I fall asleep okay, I stay asleep, but I just don't feel rested. My energy levels throughout the day just don't do what I want them to do. I poop out quickly, or I just don't feel as sharp as I want to feel. So typically those are the three areas that we're looking at. And right off the bat, I always want to make sure that there isn't something else going on with the client, like obstructive sleep apnea or restless leg syndrome or something else. So if there's any indication that one of those things might be happening, off they go to get a sleep study or to work with a sleep medical professional. My area of expertise is really in the behavior change. So we make sure that that's kind of the sea that we're swimming in.
What's the easiest entry point?
It's assessment. It's really kind of assessment for the purpose of, what is it that they want their sleep to look like? What does it typically look like? But we go a little deeper, and that is, who are you as a sleeper? What's your sleep DNA? Because, of course, if you Google it, if
Mhm.
you're not sleeping 8 hours and you're not going to bed at 10:30 and waking up at 6:30, then it's wrong. And that is a real kind of myopic approach. Most folks don't fit into that category for a variety of reasons. So you might be a night owl or an extreme morning person, or you might need 7 hours or 9 hours. So, 8 hours is the average, which means there are outliers plenty on either end. And a lot of people have no idea when they sleep best, or they may think they're a night owl, and it turns out they're not. They're more of what we call a hummingbird, someone who's kind of middle of the road. So, getting that a sense of like who you are as a sleeper, what is your specific sleep need, is a great, great place to start. And we also have to then look at what are your non negotiables.
Mhm.
So if you are a night owl, but you've got to get kids on a bus at 6:30 in the morning, That's got to happen. So we've got to take those into account. Or if you have pets, or if you're a caregiver, or you work the night shift and you're a morning person. So we really have to kind of get those non-negotiables right out on the table and say, these are the things that either can't change right now, or I'm not willing to change right now. Okay, great. We still have other areas that we can look at. And then the third piece that we do kind of right off the bat is just get a real basic understanding of the sleep science. What is it that we're looking for scientifically that equates to a good night's sleep? And oftentimes that's where clients recognize, you know what, my sleep's not as bad as I thought it was. I thought it was really broken, but turns out a lot of what's happening is completely normal, and I just have to stop worrying about it. So that's a really good place to start. And then we'll start to dial in, okay, now that we've got that under our belts, what are the strategies? What makes the most sense to try first? What's appealing and feasible as their kind of first launch into the behavior change piece?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think we can all relate to that. Like, at what point does something become something that really needs attention? It as somebody who I think historically I've been a great sleeper, have had times where I've gone through bouts of insomnia and just, taking that information and knowing the importance of sleep just with our backgrounds and all of that and going, what when do I need to take the next step? What is that signal? So for you, I mean, how do you gauge that?
Yeah, I think it's the point at which it starts to um, snowball. So, okay, full disclosure, even sleep coaches have periods of time when, sleep isn't what it ideally should be. And I know what to do, I know the fixes. And sometimes life is just life. And I may not even know exactly what is the problem, kind of where I'm stuck. I just know like something has changed with my sleep picture. Um, so, letting it ride until the point where it's like, okay, I'm doing all the things that I know I should be doing. Something else needs to change. That's when we start to recognize, like, okay, it's becoming bigger than it should be. So, one of the things I think, you're probably aware of, like with mindfulness or meditation, is the right path or the middle path, where there's not too much push or pull one way or the other. It's just to kind of go with the flow. When we start to push or pull too much on our sleep, then that just cascades into, sympathetic engagement, which is antithetical to what we want to be around sleep. So if sleep is starting to become like you don't want to go to sleep, or you're just really feeling like my daily activities are being really impacted, that's when it's time to gently get curious about what can change versus I have to like wrestle sleep into submission, so it's really coming at it from that middle path.
What are your top three recommendations or resources for people that are having trouble with their sleep?
Yeah, I so the first is consistency. And it's so it makes so much sense when we think about, okay, consistency around our sleep specifically. So a consistent wind down routine, consistent sleep hours. So, if you are a 10 to 6 a.m. person, like hitting that is, as often, like ideally 7 days a week, especially as we're trying to get your sleep back to where you want it to be. Get a little more flux in that on the weekends when sleep feels like it's pretty solid, then you get to play around a little bit. But also consistency with what you're doing during the day. Absolutely, that matters. So, your meal timing, when you're exercising, as much of that routine as possible is really going to help sync the symbol of the signals to the circadian rhythm. And that's what we're looking for out of consistency here. So, really keeping your 24-hour cycle as consistent as possible. And again, once sleep gets normalized, then you get to play around a little bit with that. It can change, but being pretty um, dialed in to consistency right off the bat. The second is light exposure. So it's so important that the little kind of timekeeper in our brain around sleep and wakefulness is triggered by light exposure. So getting out and getting some daylight exposure earlier in the day really helps to, signal the on button essentially. But it also impacts everything from how we manufacture and release melatonin, which our own natural melatonin supports our circadian rhythm. So that daylight exposure is really important. And on the flip side, dialing back the light exposure, the electric light exposure and the electronic light exposure in the evening is really important as well, so that we're also sending the signal to the brain like it's time to power down. And just kind of paying attention to what's going on outside light wise kind of gives you the cue as to what your indoor lighting should look like as well. But that's really important as a dictator for those circadian rhythms to really sync up. um, the next is movement. So really, being more active is going to help develop what we call homeostatic sleep drive. But the less fancy way to say that is sleep hunger. We want to develop a hunger for sleep. We want that appetite for sleep to be at its greatest point right around the time we want to go to bed. Movement is such a great way to do that. It doesn't have to be exercise. So if you're not an exerciser, that's okay. Just look at how to get more movement into your day. And we so optimize for efficiency around our movement. Like we take 2 baskets of laundry to the laundry room because it's just easier. It, saves us time. But taking the 2 trips separately, it's just an easy way to just focus on moving more, and that can definitely help. We call it the lubricant for sleep.
So that when we finally lay down, we're so tired that we just drift off into a blissful sleep.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of it like an appetite for food, right? Like we
Mhm.
enjoy those meals that we are just at that right level of hunger for, not starving, and not like we just have a snack. We went heavy on the appetizers, and now the meal just isn't as appealing. So really, kind of using that same mindset around having the right amount of appetite for sleep at the right time.
Mhm. It's really helpful, Kelly. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, that many of our clients set commitments that support good sleep hygiene. So, in your coaching here and beyond, how do you feel that accountability really supports someone in addressing sleep?
Mhm. Yeah, well, we know that changing any behaviors around our health is hard. And the data is showing that when it's done in a connected way and in community, it feels easier. So, right off the bat, just kind of working with someone either in a group or one on one specific to sleep kind of takes away some of the like, I'm the only person in the world that's going through this, right? Like, it kind of normalizes some of the experience. But it also then provides the container as the process goes on, this process of change, which we know is slow if it's going to be long lasting, to really pause and recognize and celebrate the wins, which oftentimes go missed, right? When you're on your own. But in a group, you can really help someone point to that's a real shift for you. Or it's not a big shift, but it's a little shift, and that's a win. So the celebration of the wins. And then again, that kind of safety net of community when things are hard, when it feels, when you feel like this should have been fixed already and it's not moving as quickly as I would like it to. Let's step back and make sure, like, are we on the right path? Is it just a matter of time, or is there a recalibration that needs to take place? So that whole concept of making change within a group, that we know works so well in accountability works applies in this case also, where you really get to share the experience. And we know we will far more easily show up for others than we will for ourselves. And so, just when we go back to that importance around consistency, showing up either weekly or biweekly to check in on how things are going, it just really helps someone stay accountable to themselves, so that they continue the process.
Thank you so much, Kelly. Really appreciate you making the time to share your knowledge with us. And thank you all for listening. And we'll be back next week.